brain is the most complex thing known to man. And here's how your brain works. When you begin to think a thought and do an action, before it ever becomes a habit, you have to establish a pathway. You have to establish a what, everyone? A pathway. And the first time you try to do something, particularly if it's complex, that pathway is not easily formed. You take any task that is reasonably complex. We'll take riding a bike, right? Very few people just hop on a bike without training wheels, say at the age of 4 or 5, and just start pedaling. Right? Is that what happens? No. What happens? Okay, so the little boy or the little girl gets on the bike. First of all, we put training wheels on there. What are we doing? So when they begin to wobble a little left, they're arrested by the training wheel. They begin to wobble a little right, they're arrested by the training wheel, and they begin to get the basic idea. But even then, when you take off the training wheels, accidents are almost invariable. And crash, crash. And the scraped knees and the scraped elbows and the whatever else begins to tell the body, that was a mistake. Let's do it this way this time. And what's happening with the brain is phenomenal. In fact, it happens so fast it is incomprehensible and incommunicable. What's taking place in the brain is that the brain is basically assembling data, and it's saying wrong way, right way. And it's going down the path. Okay, I've got 4 choices here. I take this one. If it's the wrong one, you fall. If it's the right one, you make it to the next choice. Which way? This way. And as your brain begins to try and figure out how do I ride a bike, you're establishing a neural circuit. Are we together, everyone? And then eventually one day you get on that bike and you can run down the hill and you can do jumps and you feel very good, you feel free. Even if you've not ridden a bike in a number of years, you can still get back on a bike and ride it very easily because there's a pathway. Here's the best illustration that I personally know. Imagine you've got to walk across a field. What are we walking across, everyone? It's a field, but it's not a field with short grass like this. It's a great big, tall, grassy, brambly, thistly field. And you're here at A, and you want to get to B. Can you cross that field? Can you do it? Yeah, but what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to walk. Is it going to be easy or hard? It's going to be rough, isn't it? So you're going to start fighting your way, pulling the brambles across, fighting your way across the field. Okay, can you get across it? Is it easy? No, it's going to take some energy, it's going to take some effort. But as you're fighting and working and struggling to get across this field, independent of how dense it is sort of analogous to the complexity of the task, and eventually you make it across the field, and as you look back, can you discern something like a path? Yes or no? Sure you can. So now let's just say you had to walk back across that field. What path would you choose? The same one. Why? Because there will be less resistance this time. Are we together? So I'm going to go back across the field. Is it still hard? Extremely. Is it still difficult? Absolutely. But is it as hard? No, not as much. And I fight and I struggle and I get across that field. And then now I look back, is the path more discernible? So if I have to go back across that path again, is it going to be easier the third time? Far easier. Now, if I walk this path 100 times or 1,000 times back and forth, one of these days I'm going to look at that path and there's going to be no obstacles. I will have worn away any obstacle. I will have worn away any resistance. It's just easy. And if I'm ever presented with that field and someone comes to me and says, yeah, you've got this path, but you should go over here. I'm going to say, why would I go over there? All the brambles are over there. I've spent so much time carving out this path. Your default condition is just going to be to walk right across. Are we together? I'm just going to walk right across. So easy. See how easy it is to walk right? No resistance at all. This is your default. This is how your brain works. Your brain works just like this. God has wired your brain, listen to me, God has wired your brain for moral growth. But the converse, the flip side, the necessary converse of a brain wired for moral growth is a brain that can become immoral and entrenched in that immorality. Are we together? This is how you get your habits. Your brain is basically, neurologically and physiologically, a series of pathways that you have chosen over the course of your life. And what Dr. Mario Beauregard there said is that we have learned that the adult brain is actually very, does anyone remember what that word is? Plastic. What a weird word. Plastic. I remember when I was a little boy and I heard about plastic surgeons. I thought that plastic surgeons put plastic in people's faces. And I was like, I don't want any plastic shoved in my face, right? Like, shove this thing in there. Ugh. No. Plastic is a modern invention. And plastic actually comes from the Latin word meaning malleable. They can make plastic into anything. You can make plastic into microphone stands. You can make plastic into water bottles. You can make plastic into watches. It's called plastic because it's so plastic. It's malleable. It's changeable. It's like clay. Are we together? Now, there was a thinking that when a child was first born, you had about 7-ish years, depending on the school of thought, whether you lean toward nature or lean toward nurture. But most would say in what are called the formative years. Has anyone ever heard this term before? The formative years, that you have about your first 3 to 7 years to more or less set the person you're going to be for the rest of your life. Right? The formative years. But what Dr. Beauregard is saying, and what most modern neurological research is confirming, is that even the adult brain, even the 30-year-old brain, the 40-year-old brain, the 57-year-old brain, the 60-year-old brain, even the adult brain is very plastic. To put it in very simple language, you can teach an old dog new tricks. Are we together? Now let's watch this. Go to the screen here with me. Watch this. The decisions that you make today, okay? Because basically your character and the person that you are today, let me talk to my young people here. The people that you are today is a composite of the choices you have made over the course of your life. Are we together? So you're sitting before me today, you are before me today and before the mirror when you look in the mirror, not as someone that you had to be, but as someone that you have chosen to be. Are we together? And a series of choices have made you the person that you are today. Okay? So, the choices that you make today create the person that you will be, what does it say? Tomorrow. Are we clear on that? This is not only true spiritually, this is true neurologically. The choices that you make today create the person that you will be what? Tomorrow. Now watch this. Here's what happens when you put off an appeal. Here's what happens when you decide not today, but maybe next time. Maybe next week of prayer, maybe next Sabbath. What ends up happening is that because the decisions that you make today create the person that you will be tomorrow, you have no guarantee that the person you will be tomorrow will be capable of making, much less recognizing the moral choices that face you today.
Wow. I'm sitting at home.
Are we together now? See, you make a choice today, and you're thinking, I'm not going to make this the right choice today because I'll make the right choice in the future, but there's a major fallacy here, a neurological as well as a logical fallacy, and that is that the person that will be here is not the same person back there that recognized this moral choice. How many of us know people in this room, heaven forbid, I hope it's not yourself, how many of us in this room know people who were solid in the church, raised in a good context, who just did a little something, and then a little more something, and before you know it, they are so far gone that they are totally irrecognizable from the person you used to know? Right. Yes or no? Let me tell you something, they're also non-recognizable to themselves. They would have never thought. They would have never anticipated that they would end up down there. All they wanted to do was just to make a little adjustment. But what happens is that the person you are on Tuesday is not the person you were on Monday. The person you are on Wednesday is not the person you were on Tuesday, and the person you are on Thursday is not the person you were back on Monday, and you make enough bad choices in your life, and what ends up happening is that you have created a person that may or may not be able to recognize the moral choices that God brought to you back on Monday. No wonder. No wonder Joshua says, choose today. Don't wait until tomorrow. You might not even be able to hear this sermon tomorrow. See, today it's making sense to you. Some of you are listening saying, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense, but I don't know, the whole... What did the psalmist say? Today, if you can still hear the voice of God, he was making a profound neurologically sound statement. Today, if you can hear the voice of God, act on it, because if you don't, you will harden your heart. If he was speaking in a modern context, he would say, you are solidifying your neuronal pathways. Wow. Can you hear the voice of God today? Don't think you can make a decision in a year. Don't think you can make a decision in 2 years. Don't think you can make a decision in a week. Why is Joshua filled with urgency? Why does Elijah say, don't wait? Don't wait for a moment. Act right now. Why does the Apostle Paul say, today is the accepted time? Behold, today is the day of salvation. Joshua is urgent. Elijah is urgent. The psalmist is urgent. Paul is urgent. And their urgency is not tied to some awareness of the soon return of Jesus. Their urgency is tied to something far more significant, and that is your own person. Who are you becoming?